In the grand kingdom of Zanda, no man could tame the heart of Princess Nasha. Until one did, and vanished forever, known across lands for her unmatched beauty and sharp wit. Nasha rejected every suitor who dared approach. Warriors, crumbled princes wept, and whispers of a curse filled the palace halls. Then came Jeno, a mysterious stranger with no title, no wealth, and no fear. He didn't try to win her, he came to test her. What followed was a night that changed everything. A love born not of flattery but of fire, and a price no one saw coming. Let me take you to the golden kingdom of Zanda, a land bathed in sunlight cradled between the silver hills of the east and the sapphire rivers of the west. Its people lived in peace. Its soil bore plenty, and its palace shimmered atop Mount Terun, like a crown on the earth itself. But the true jewel of Zanda was not its gold, nor its fertile valleys. It was Princess Nasha, first daughter of King Tempo, the untamed flame of the kingdom. From the day she was born, Nasha captured the hearts of all who laid eyes on her. The court poets ran out of verses to describe her beauty. The palace painters failed to do her justice. Her eyes held the quiet fury of a summer storm, and her voice, when she spoke, rang with the grace of mountain winds. By the time she turned 18, word of her radiance had traveled far beyond the borders of Zanda, stirring restless hearts in distant lands. But for all her beauty, Nasha's heart was locked tighter than the palace vault. Suitors came like waves crashing against the cliffs, loud, powerful, certain they could conquer, each one believing he'd be the exception. Brave warriors boasted of their victories. Merchants showered her with pearls, sapphires and silks from the east. Nobles recited poetry until their voices cracked. But Nasha listened, smiled politely, and turned every one of them away. To the warrior who flexed his muscles and swore to protect her, she said, "What is a sword to a woman who fears no blade?" To the merchant who promised her ships filled with treasures, she replied, "What use is gold if my heart remains empty?" And to the nobleman who offered his lineage and lands, she asked, "Can your title love me? Can it listen to my silence?" They left embarrassed, one wept, one cursed, another rode straight into the river out of shame. At first the kingdom laughed. "She is wise," they said. "She waits for a worthy heart." But as the years passed, laughter turned to whispers and whispers into fears. "She mocks them." Some said, "She is cursed." Others whispered. Even within the marble halls of the palace, unease began to settle like dust. The king's advisors urged him to act. They feared the gods would grow angry. Some suggested arranging a marriage by force, while others proposed rituals to lift what they believed was a curse. But King Tempo, though frustrated, loved his daughter dearly. He believed she would eventually choose. Yet he could no longer bear the embarrassment, or the rumors that painted his daughter as untouchable, unnatural. So he issued a royal decree. From this day forward, any man who seeks the hand of Princess Nasha may do so. If he wins her heart, he shall receive half the kingdom. But if he fails, he must leave Zanda forever and never return. It was a bold challenge, one that turned Nasha from a legend into a prize. Half a kingdom for a heart. The news spread like wildfire. Kingdoms sent their finest. Zanda's gates turned into a revolving door of hopefuls. Some came with flowers, others came with swords. A prince from the north offered a mountain of rubies. A famed poet from the east sang a song so sorrowful it made the queen weep. But Nasha, she did not bend. Her words were as sharp as ever, her eyes unshaken, and yet behind her fire there was a quiet weariness. She would never admit it. But sometimes when no one was watching, she stood by the palace windows at dusk, looking out toward the horizon, as if searching for something even she could not name. Then one late afternoon, when the sky was dipped in amber and the palace gardens shimmered under the sunset, a strange figure arrived. He did not ride a jeweled horse or carry an army behind him. He did not announce himself with trumpets or send gifts ahead of his arrival. He walked alone, dressed in simple black robes, hooded, quiet. His face was shadowed and his hands bore no rings. The guards, startled, asked his name. He answered only, Jeno. Jeno of where? They pressed. He smiled. Of nowhere. They scoffed. Are you a beggar or a magician? I am neither, he said. I've come for the princess. They laughed until he stepped forward, eyes dark and still as night. Something in his gaze made the bravest guard step aside. Without realizing it, word of the strange man reached the throne room. Swiftly, King Tempo raised an eyebrow. He dares enter without title or offering. But Nasha, curious, said calmly, Let him in. The hall quieted as Jeno walked its length. His steps were silent, his posture unbowed. The air felt heavier as he approached the throne. The king sat tall. What gives you the right to seek my daughter? Jeno turned his head slightly. I need no right, your majesty. I have only come to see if she is worthy of my heart. The room gasped. A bold warrior choked on his wine. Even the guards stiffened, but Nasha smiled. For the first time in many moons, a real curious smile. She rose, stepped down from her dais, and faced him. And what makes you think I'd care for your heart? She asked coolly. He looked her in the eyes. I don't expect you to. I only want to see if your spirit is as fierce as they say, or if you merely wear a mask to keep the unworthy away. That struck her. For years, men had tried to impress her, worship her, win her, but never had someone come simply to test her. Nasha tilted her head. So you come with no riches, no title, and no intention to flatter. You come to challenge me. I come to see you, he said simply. The room held its breath. King Tempo, though insulted, did not stop them. Something in Nasha's stance told him this was different, that if he interrupted, he would lose her, not to Jeno, but to her own fury. And so for the first time, Nasha invited a suitor to walk with her in the royal gardens, just the two of them. The guards whispered. The nobles watched from windows. They walked beneath moonlit vines and blooming starflowers, and they spoke not of kingdoms or riches or duties, but of dreams, fears, silence. Jeno told her stories of distant lands. Some she had heard, some she suspected he invented, but she listened. And when she laughed, it was the kind that surprised even her. At one point, he paused and asked her, What do you want, Nasha? Not what they expect, not what they say you should do, She hesitated. No one had ever asked her that. I don't know. She said honestly, That, Jeno replied, is why I came. By the time they returned to the palace, the stars had scattered the sky like diamonds across velvet. Nasha turned to him. If I said you had passed the test, what would you do? He shrugged. Leave. She blinked. Leave. He smiled. You are not ready to choose, princess. And I am not here to be chosen, only to awaken something you've forgotten. Before she could respond, he bowed, not deeply, not humbly, but with quiet respect, and walked away. The next morning he was gone, vanished. No one knew how he left. No one saw him pass the gates. It was as if he had stepped into the mist and disappeared. But from that day, something in Nasha changed. She still turned suitors away, still held her sharp tongue. But the fire in her eyes had a new glint, like a spark waiting for a flame. And every dusk she stood at her window looking out, not in weariness, but in wonder. In the days that followed Jeno's mysterious departure, Zanda grew restless. The courtiers whispered more than usual. The palace guards cast wary glances toward the gardens where he had walked with the princess. Even the queen asked in hushed tones, who was he? But King Tempo had no answer, and neither did Nasha. She should have forgotten him, like all the others. She should have laughed at his arrogance, dismissed his cryptic parting words. But something about Jeno lingered like a dream, too vivid to be a dream, like a melody that refused to fade. Every morning she told herself it meant nothing. Every night she stood by the window a little longer than before. And then, without fanfare, he returned. No trumpet, no announcement, no explanation. He was simply there, as if he had always been there. The guards who had failed to notice his departure the first time now watched him return in silence, too stunned to speak. It was as though the palace itself held its breath. When Nasha saw him walking down the same marble corridor, dressed again in black robes, unchanged, unmoved, something inside her jolted. Not anger, not surprise. Something else. Something more dangerous. She summoned him at once. The suitors waiting in line that day were dismissed without a word. A prince from the south threw down a diamond necklace in frustration. A general cursed the heavens. None of them mattered now. When Jeno entered her private chambers, Nasha was ready. No court, no audience, no rules. The doors shut behind him, like the closing of a vault. She stood by the great, arched window, a beam of light spilling across her shoulder, casting her silhouette in gold and shadow. "You disappeared," she said, not turning. "I wasn't needed," came the quiet reply. "You left without permission. I was not yours to command." Finally, she turned. Her gaze was sharp, but her expression unreadable. She had mastered the art of the mask. "You come back uninvited," she said. Jeno took a single step forward. "Do you want me to leave?" She hesitated, and that was his answer. He smiled just slightly. Not mockery, not confidence. Something in between. "Why are you here?" she demanded, stepping toward him, now closing the space. "To continue what we started," he replied. "And what exactly is that?" He didn't flinch. The truth, that stopped her. She studied him like a hawk, watching a storm cloud. Every other man had bent at this point, tried to flatter or fawn or fight. But Jeno didn't move. He wasn't playing her game. He was writing his own. "You speak in riddles," she snapped. "You speak in masks," he countered. For a moment, silence fell between them, thick. Charged like the sky before lightning, she narrowed her eyes. "Do you think yourself clever above the others?" "No," he said. "Just awake." That rattled her, though she hid it well. Nasha stepped closer until only inches remained. She circled him slowly, studying the lines of his face, the calm set of his jaw, the stillness of his breath. "You are not afraid of me," she said. "No." "You are not trying to impress me." "No." "Then why are you still here?" He turned to face her fully. "Because you are still pretending." The words sliced through her like ice. She wanted to laugh, to scoff, to crush him with some clever line. But nothing came. Her mask slipped just a crack in the corner of the room. A candle flickered and went out. "You know nothing of me," she said quietly, almost a whisper. "I know enough," Jeno replied. "Enough to see that the throne isn't the only cage in this palace." Her heart kicked in her chest. "You think you're in control," he said, "but you've built a kingdom of illusions. One glance, one smile, and men fall. But what happens when one doesn't?" She said nothing. "What happens," he went on, "when someone sees not the crown, not the fire, but the ache beneath?" She turned away suddenly, unsure why the room felt colder. Jeno took a step forward, not threatening, but deliberate. And then another. "You want to be seen," he said. "Truly seen, but you fear it too." She faced him again, defiant. "You presume too much, and you hide too well." Then quietly, gently, he reached out and touched her wrist. The contact was light, barely there, but it hit her like thunder. "You've spent your life," he said, his voice low, "searching for a man who would not fall before you, and now you have found one." The silence that followed was unlike any that had come before. It wasn't a pause, it was a shift, a break in something ancient and fragile. Nasha pulled her hand back, breath caught in her throat. He didn't follow, he only looked at her, with eyes that saw past silk and title, past beauty and legend, straight into the woman beneath. She needed to break this moment, to regain control, to put distance between herself and the terrifying truth blooming in her chest. "You may go," she said, voice clipped. Jeno nodded, "As you wish." He turned, walked to the door, but just before leaving, he paused. "You're not afraid of me, princess?" he said without looking back. "You're afraid of what you feel when you're not in command." Then he left, and for the first time in her life, Nasha was left standing in silence, alone, uncertain, shaken. That night, Zanda did not sleep. The wind howled through the palace corridors. The moon hung low and red. Even the palace dogs did not bark. It was as if the air itself had changed. Nasha sat alone by the great mirror in her chambers. She stared not at her reflection, but through it. Her face, always composed, always confident, now carried the trace of something raw, doubt, desire, fear. She thought of his voice, the quiet certainty, the way he had touched her without trying to claim her, the way he had looked at her, not as a princess, not as a prize, but as a challenge, an equal. She hated that he had left first. She hated that she had wanted him to stay. In the silence of her room, she spoke to herself a whisper only the walls could hear. He didn't bow. The truth was worse than any curse. She had not beaten him, had not dismissed him. She had been unmade by him. All her life she had been the storm, but now she had tasted the edge of something far more dangerous. A man who would not yield and yet did not try to conquer. And deep within her chest, curled like a serpent, waking from slumber, was the undeniable truth. She was the one who had begun to fall. It began with the soft hush of dawn, that quiet hour when night hesitates to let go and day hasn't yet claimed the sky. The palace gates groaned open with solemn grace. Sunlight, pale and golden, poured into the marble hallways like a divine spotlight. The courtiers assembled in silence, holding their breath, waiting for the usual scene. The defeated suitor had bowed, pride shattered, walking away in shame. But not this time. Jeno stepped forward, unbroken, unshaken. A dark figure, cloaked in calm. He walked with no triumph in his stride, no smile on his lips, yet everything about him screamed victory. And then something far more astonishing. Princess Nasha followed, not with her usual air of mocking superiority, not with her knowing smirk or haughty chin held high. No, this time, she walked behind him with quiet reverence in her eyes. Her face held no mask. Her steps were soft, almost hesitant. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. "The princess," someone whispered. "She's changed." "No," said another. "She's been tamed." The royal court, which had once treated suitors as entertainment, now stood in stunned silence. Even the walls seemed to lean in to witness what had never been seen before. Princess Nasha had chosen. At the foot of the throne, King Tempo stood tall, cloaked in velvet and gold, his crown gleaming in the rising sun. Though proud and hardened by years of failed matches and public pressure, even he couldn't hide his astonishment. His daughter, the Storm of Zanda, had bent her will to a man who neither fought nor begged, only stood firm. The king raised his scepter, voice ringing through the chamber. "Let it be known," he declared, "that this man, Jeno of nowhere, has done what no other could. He has earned the heart of Princess Nasha, and by my word, shall receive half the kingdom as promised." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Servants clapped, nobles bowed, musicians lifted flutes to their lips. But Jeno did not smile. He turned calmly to the king, and in a voice steady as the sea said, "The prophecy never promised a reward, only a price." The celebration fell into eerie silence. The king frowned. "What do you mean?" Jeno turned his gaze to Nasha, his eyes soft now, full of something deeper than victory, full of knowing. "I did not come to claim land or gold," he said. "I came to answer the call that has echoed through time, the one that demands a heart unshaken, meet a heart unyielding." And then before any could stop it, his body began to dissolve. A scream caught in someone's throat. Cries rang out. The musicians dropped their flutes. Nasha stepped forward, hand trembling. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. What is happening?" Jeno looked down at his hands as they slowly turned to dust, fine and pale, like morning ash. His robe fluttered weightless, and the breeze that swept through the palace carried the edges of his soul with it. "The man who tames the storm," he said, "must vanish with the wind." "No," Nasha cried, running to him. "You cannot leave. Not now. Not after everything." She reached out, fingers desperate to grasp something real. But her hand passed through his chest like mist. His form flickered. She fell to her knees. "Please don't go." Jeno knelt before her, barely more than a ghost. Now, his fingers brushed her cheek, not with touch, but with presence. "You weren't cursed," he said softly. "You were waiting for you," she whispered. "No." He smiled sadly. "For the part of you that would open when you finally met yourself through me." Her tears came freely now, hot against her skin. "But I love you," she breathed. His form shimmered a swirl of light and dust. "And that," he said, "is why I must go." And then he was gone. No explosion, no thunder, just silence. The courtyard, once full of breathless anticipation, stood frozen in shock. Even the birds in the sky seemed to stop mid-flight, stunned by the magic they had witnessed. King Tempo said nothing. He lowered his scepter, and Nasha simply knelt there. Time passed. Zanda moved on as kingdoms do. Festivals returned. Banners were raised. The king resumed his council meetings. Nobles brought more suits, though none dared speak of love again. But something had changed. The flame that once roared behind Nasha's eyes had dimmed. The firebrand princess, once untouchable, became quiet, reflective. Her laughter, when it came, was softer now, tinged with memory. She no longer played games. She no longer toyed with hearts, because hers had been claimed and shattered in the same breath. Each evening, when the wind stirred through the palace like a ghost, from long ago, she would sit in the garden where Jeno had once stood. Her eyes would follow the falling petals, the soft rustle of trees. And in those moments, she would close her eyes and listen not to the voices of her court, but to the silence he left behind, a silence that whispered only to her. Once a young maid asked her gently, "Your Highness, will you ever choose another?" Nasha smiled, but her eyes held a sorrow deeper than words. "I chose once," she said. "I cannot choose again, not when the gods demanded the price of him." The people came to call it the Day of Dust, a sacred day when love, pride and fate collided in the palace of Zanda. Songs were written, ballads sung, but none captured the truth. Not really, only Nasha held the truth close to her heart. At night, she would return to the eastern wing of the palace, to the high balcony where he first touched her wrist. There, beneath the moon, she would whisper his name to the wind, "Jeno." And when the wind blew back with warmth, soft, calm, familiar, she would smile just a little and whisper again, "I'm still here." Thank you so much for watching and staying with us until the very end of this magical tale. We hope Princess Nasha and Jeno's journey stirred something deep within you, whether it was wonder heartache or the power of true love's sacrifice. If this story touched you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another enchanting tale. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. What moments stayed with you the most? What do you think happened after Jeno disappeared? Your voice helps shape the next chapters we tell, so don't be shy. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and let stories light your path.